What's up, guys? Another week, another episode of Talkin Lost. We are on season 2, episode 13. We are cranking through these, almost through all of season 2. We have an excellent episode, lots of stuff to cover, lots of big, juicy character moments to hit here. Probably the darkest that this season has gotten so far. A long con. I remember looking forward to this episode being like, I'm like, is this that Sawyer like long con episode where he was really teamed up with Charlie? But he wanted us to think it was him. Was it this? Was it this? And it was finally this episode. I had a feeling it was going to be this. Luke, what did you think of this episode before we get started?
I thought this is the real like brewing character in inner conflict that the group has to deal with. It's been brewing for a few episodes now. You know, Charlie had his whole villain arc in the last episode, and now it's like, okay, it's like Sawyer's the new sheriff in town, as he says about himself, which is very Sawyer. I
Yes.
absolutely loved it.
It's interesting because this episode, I feel like what happened is the tail end Survivor section of this season kind of put the main conflicts on hold for so long that it almost made you forget about it. And now that we're like past that, now that we're back into it, now it's like, ooh, now we can really play around with these dynamics. Now we can really cook with this. All of that and more on today's episode of Talkin Lost. All right, season 2, episode 13, The Long Con. Like I said, this is another Sawyer episode. But again, this episode is so complex, so layered. The thing that I love so much about this episode is that it reminds me a lot of, like con men movies, where the entire episode, the story is the con in and of itself, where you go in expecting one thing, then it turns into something else, then it turns into something else, and then you think you finally got the answer, and then, here comes the switcheroo to really tell you what's going on here. Like I said, we get another Sawyer Con episode, as is the title, The Long Con, where basically you get this backstory where Sawyer, you've been kind of led to this belief that Sawyer is, this charming rogue, he couldn't really help himself, he was screwed over by this con man who screwed over his dad, which caused his dad to kill his mom and sent him kind of on this path of roguish devilry. And so you kind of been led to like feel sorry because you're like, oh, every time it feels like he's doing something bad, the survivors are really just misinterpreting things and just naturally blaming him. But this is the episode that shows that, like, yeah, maybe they were right this whole time about Sawyer. Maybe he shouldn't be trusted. Again, we've spent so much time with him to the point where, again, it's like, he was on the raft with Michael and Jin. He was literally within an inch of his life for the first half of the season. He was literally on his deathbed in this one episode where Kate was hallucinating about a horse and everything. And now this is a classic case of he sees an advantage, he takes it. And what you don't even realize that you're so focused. It's the classic case of the magician's hand, I guess you could call it, where you're so focused on one thing the whole time that you never see the other hand coming from the other direction. Where, again, it sets us up right at the beginning of the episode where Sawyer's coming out of the water to, when he sees Charlie, who's kind of been excommunicated after the events of the last episode, to this random side of the island. Next thing you know, Charlie makes a crack being like, yeah, well, Jack's going through your stuff. And he goes and he's immediately pissed. And what's crazy is even before that, we're set up because this whole thing, everything that happens in this episode stems from the man of science, man of faith conflict. Again, it all comes back to that. That's driving all the tension in this episode, where it's Jack and Locke. They're storing some things in the locker with the guns. Jack sees the Hail Marys that Locke took from Charlie in the last episode. And Jack just asks Locke for something simple like the combination. And Locke is like, I'm going to assume that this is because, that there are a lot of cliffs and you're going to want it in the case of my inevitable death. Once again, it's just like these two just can't help each other. It's like every single point that one of them brings up, the other one has to jump down their throat, And Locke, of course, immediately assumes like, and it's not for, you and Ana Lucia and building that army to go up against the others, because you also have this thing of where, again, 2 episodes ago, you had them going up against the others who told them that they would leave them alone as long as they stayed up to their corner of the island. Jack, of course, doesn't trust them and wants to start forming the army with Ana Lucia. Locke is like, okay, we really don't have a choice, but we have to go with this. And then it's, it's because of that, like, kind of selective, like, it's the classic, trying to protect the others from the others, it grants this kind of like hoity-toity, oh, we know better than you mentality, which creates this opening, which creates this rift, which creates this conflict ultimately amongst the rest of the survivors. So it's already where this episode's setting us up for a lot that we're gonna deal with.
Yeah, and even if in this case it's not necessarily like, oh, I believe in this and I believe in what I see in terms of science and faith. It's just like, okay, I want to deal with it this way, and you want to deal with it this way. So it's still that driving conflict is a massive part of why just the length of the season as a whole works. Like it's never feels like filler. Like there's always something brewing, and then you throw Sawyer into the mix, who's like kind of like a little finger type. Like he's with who he kind of sides with whoever benefits him most in that particular case. He's always like switching sides, but mostly he's just looking out for himself. So and this episode, like especially in his flashback sequence, I think that's an indicator of how his arc is going to go throughout the rest of the season. Like there's a little bit of good in him. Like he doesn't want to admit it, but eventually I think it'll come out. Like he's still the island bad boy for now, but eventually that's how I see it going.
Well, that's Sawyer's thing, is the fact that he can't help himself ultimately at the end of the day, is that when push comes to shove, obviously, when again, they're in a dire situation, when they're going up against the others, when they're like trapped on the raft, when they're always in the situation that forces him to choose sides, he's always going to choose the side of good, at least for now. He's always going to choose the side with with our main group against the others, mostly because again, we still don't know at this point in the show, we still really don't know what the others are and what they're about. So right now there's kind of this ominous boogeyman on the other side of the island. But then what happens is you have him constantly, for lack of a better word, being put in his place by the other survivors who claim to know better than him or claim that they are better than him. And it pisses him off because Sawyer's still in a position where he's like, look, we're all trapped in this situation. You're not better than me at the end of the day. So he takes this whole Jack Locke presiding and lording themselves over them, plus he just finds out about the guns in the locker. So obviously he's an advantageous person. He's like, oh, I see a situation. I'm going to try and, make myself the better of it ultimately. And so obviously when he sees Jack going through his stuff, and Jack's justification is, oh, you stole all that stuff from you stole all that stuff from the plane to begin with. And Sawyer's like, yeah, we already established, like, however many days ago, like however many months ago when that happened, that like, it was kind of fair game when I was stealing all the stuff, at the beginning, and you going through that kind of violates this unbreakable bond, and the fact that he's talking to Charlie at the same time when he sees that happening, again, it's setting us up for that, and it's setting us up for kind of that connection. You're like, oh, both these characters have been spurned individually. They both kind of have a beef with the two leaders. Charlie's pissed at Locke, and now Sawyer's pissed at Jack. So now they both kind of have a little bit of there's that little bit of tension set up, and that's also what brings us into the flashbacks too, where again, we've been constantly told through the flashbacks that Sawyer is, only conning because it's the only thing he knows how to, because he doesn't have any choice. But this is the episode that shows, oh no, like there are some people that Sawyer conned just because he could have, where you see the title of the episode, Long Con, where he's hooking up with this girl played by Kim Dickens, supposedly to get her husband's money. She claims that she doesn't have access to any of her husband's money from the divorce. They end up, trying to pull off a bunch of cons together. Eventually, he manages to get it out of her that she does have the 600. He meets up with his partner, played by Kevin Dunn. This is a very character-centric episode right here, who tells him that, yeah, you got no choice. You have to get that money or I'm going to put one in you. Bullet, I mean. And so eventually he manages to make Kim Dickens go on the run. And then by making it seem like there was a car outside to threaten them, then eventually he goes back inside after a couple and takes the money for himself. So that kind of ties in, showing that, like, yeah, maybe Sawyer isn't as good of a character as we thought. What did you think of Sawyer's flashbacks in this episode?
Yeah, I think it's very further revealing, what his shtick is, why he is the way that he is on the island. That he as I said, he does look out for himself, but he's very advantageous. So, and he's very scheming. So he set up the whole long con, and in the present on the island, he set up the whole plan with Charlie and attacking Sun, and how that folded in, and that created a whole conflict, like even more like mistrust between everyone on the island. So it's like a ticking time bomb that he's essentially creating here, which he eventually takes advantage of, hides the guns wherever he did hide them. And in the flashback, yeah, he's just like I don't know. He just I don't know. I lost my train of thought.
It happens. Yeah, I think the point that you brought up is the most important thing to focus on, which is where even though Charlie was kind of the motivation for all of this, Sawyer is the one who came up with this whole crazy plan ultimately. Which, as you said, if I'm mistaken, if I gotta make sure because the problem with episodes like this is that when you try to put all the chain of events together, that's when you're like, oh, so right now the plan was as it was. So they're aware that Ana Lucia is trying to coerce Jack into forming an army, but they're having a hard time with motivating people. So obviously Ana Lucia brings up this idea of, oh, the problem is, you people have gotten too comfortable. You're not scared now. Next thing you know, Sun's tending to her garden. There's this flash flood that happens. Vincent comes out of the grass. Next thing you know, she gets attacked. A bag's thrown over her head. She's dragged into the jungle. Everyone's up in arms. Everybody's worried. They're like, oh no, have the others come back at the end of the day? Next thing you know, more people start getting recruited to Ana Lucia's army. Sawyer, takes Kate onto the path. They end up finding the hood. Sawyer suspects foul play and immediately tells Kate, how well do you know Ana Lucia? Kate tells Jack. Jack confronts Ana Lucia. Next thing you know, Kate begs Sawyer to go to Locke and tell him to move the guns because Jack knows the combo, so there could be a risk there. Locke ends up moving the guns. This causes a rift between Jack and Locke. They end up yelling at each other while this whole skirmish is happening. Sawyer has Charlie follow Locke and steal the guns, so now they're in a place where only Sawyer knows, so Sawyer has complete control of the guns. Is that pretty much it? Am I missing anything there? I think that's pretty much everything.
I think that's more or less. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I think there's a cat fight coming between Kate and Ana Lucia. It's like, ooh.
Oh, there's some sort of tension definitely coming, especially because like Kate beforehand was, she was kind of like the hot girl on the island. She really didn't have that much competition from Sun and Claire, because they were pretty much already booed up. Same thing with Shannon, and now Shannon's dead ultimately. So Kate was kind of like, oh, I could like play footsie back and forth between Jack and Sawyer, but now obviously the Jack is like starting to gravitate towards Ana Lucia. She's like, oh, okay.
Like, she don't like that.
Yeah, she's got to like be firmly in Sawyer's camp now. So obviously Kate confronts Sawyer at the end of it and is like, oh, why do you want everybody to hate you? And Sawyer's just like, well, it's clear that you don't hate me, Freckles. Ultimately, before he goes into the woods and you have the big reveal that like, oh, it was Charlie the whole time. He was involved with this too. Like I said, and what did you think of Charlie's motivation? The fact that this was all his revenge against Locke. He's like, yeah, I didn't care about the guns. I just wanted Locke to be humiliated, to feel like a fool the way that he made me feel.
Yeah, I think he essentially has no friends on the island anymore, like except for like Sawyer, who's like Sawyer's like the one guy who doesn't like completely hate him. He's like, hey, you drowning a baby? Don't know about that, but when he did appear, like out of the shadows, like everything just sort of clicked. Like, of course,
yes, yes.
Like that was like, oh, perfect television writing. Just like everything slides into place. Because I thought, okay, like just knock Sun out. That's not something the others would do.
Right.
So I was like
right.
wondering.
Well, I mean, it's so obvious just from like how clunky the effort is. It's like, oh no, this is just a scare tactic. Like this isn't one of the others. And just based on how it's been set up, like Ana Lucia was kind of so forcefully with it that like, okay, this is clearly one of the island. This is one of those things where like the season 1 last couple episodes, they were like trying to bait us into thinking it was one thing, but really it's something else. I'm like, no, this is a classic case of no, this is obviously one of the other island survivors, but they want us to think it's Ana Lucia when in reality, with the majority of the episode, we assume that it's Sawyer, but then it turns out to be Charlie at the end. So first Ana Lucia, then Sawyer, then Charlie.
And of course, we had Sawyer's big monologue with gun in hand. That was very like ooh, that's a big character moment.
That was very much like, oh, Josh Holloway gets to cook right here with this monologue, which it's like, oh man, this is good stuff. This is really, really good stuff right here. We haven't really, like I said, Sawyer's gone from being, nearly drowning on the raft with a gunshot wound to, being fatigued to the point of exhaustion, to being unconscious for like 2 episodes straight, to finally healing up and getting better. So it's been a little bit since we've had like a chance for Sawyer to cook, and we finally got that this episode, which is, it's long overdue if you ask me. But really the only other subplot in this episode is Hurley and Sawyer, Hurley and Saeed, sorry. Saeed's kind of been off on his own, commiserating ever since Shannon's unfortunate death, and Hurley reveals that the radio signal that Boone picked up when he was in the smuggler's plane, it turned out it was Bernard's signal. I think we saw that in the other 48 Days episode when Bernard was fooling around with his radio, and so he asked if Saeed can make can make like some form of long form signal. Sayid at first says no. Then at the end of the episode, he comes back. He's revealed he's made some form of gizmo that they hook up to the radio. They put it out there. And the problem is that they start picking up radio waves. And he's like, yeah, that could be coming from anywhere. But for now, there's a chance, ultimately.
And Hurley says any time. So I'm like,
ooh,
is that like
already
poking?
Us up?
Is that like poking at the audience? Like,
up.
Is that poking at the audience? Like, hey,
remember this?
They wouldn't put that line in for nothing. That's
exactly. That was Damon Lindelof just being like, oh, we could potentially hit it. He's like, I know I want to do something with time travel, but definitely not yet. We're still kind of easing the audience into the setting, but for now, we could like start to throw in hints.
You have to earn the time travel.
Yes,
in a case like this.
We shall see ultimately if we shall see if and when we get to it. See what I did there. If we shall see if and when we get to it, if this show has earned its time travel set stuff. But for now, like I said, we're left with just more conflict, more division amongst the survivors. So it's setting us up perfectly for the next episode, which is very aptly titled "One of Them." You know, like I said, where the others may be leaving them alone, but that may not mean, that doesn't mean that there's not going to be some mischief, some shenanigans in the next couple of episodes. If you catch my drift. So one more
Sayid episode next.
One of them, I believe. Yes, that's the Sayid episode. Yeah. So like I said, and we already got the hint too, because Sawyer even says to Sayid, he's like, "You want to torture me so badly right now, don't you?" Oh, so good. This is such a good episode. This is if we were rating episodes the way we're doing movies, I would definitely give this 5 stars for sure, because this was a great fucking episode. So like I said, I feel like that covers everything. Like I said, we've got one more episode for May, and then we're into June, and then we wrap season 2 in July, and then we are officially done with season 2. Yeah, crazy how fast it went. And then we start August, and we're into season 3. It's gonna be a good one, to say the least. So Luke, like I said, I'm not going to do plugs right now, because we're going to be reuniting on Andor immediately in the next episode. So in the meantime, I will just say, get lost. I will see you guys in a bit for Andor.